Beautiful. So today we're going to work on sculpting and lifting. We're going to work systematically up the face with our facial massage, and then I'm going to pop my gloves on and we're going to work inside the mouth with our intraoral work. And this is hopefully going to create lots of lovely space around your jaw and relieve any tension that's built up there. First, I'm going to start with a double cleanse to prep the skin, and then gently work over the chest muscles to increase the lymphatic flow. I'm going to start with a milky cleanser today. Looking all over the face and including the décolletage. Using quick brisk motions just to really help us lift any of that SPF or makeup that's left on. Working through all areas that we'll be massaging later. I'm going to take a set of warm mitts and just hover them over to introduce that warmth. Making sure to work into all the nooks and crannies. Making sure we don't forget anywhere as we work up the face. Next, I'm going to go in with our oil cleanser. This one has a beautiful scent of blue tansy and passion fruit. I'm really taking my time to work it into the skin in light upward motions. Looking either side of the nose. It's really common to have a build up of congestion. And again, bringing that down over the chest. holding on the temples, and then removing my next set of mitts. Applying a nice firm pressure, and the warmth can feel really lovely and comforting. I like to hold over the eyes just for a moment, and then lifting up. I'm going to start by working our dry work over the chest. So I'm starting by gently waving over the sternum, and then coming to work either side of the arms, pumping down towards the armpits. And come behind the ears. And then along the jawline. And underneath the chin. Creating a really gentle wave, waking up all the lymph nodes underneath the surface. Gently pumping behind the ears. Working my way back down. And finishing again over the center of the chest. Stretching the neck. Applying gentle pressure either side of the ears. And pressing down the center part. Using my body pressure to increase the strength. Taking my oil, spreading this across the chest, working down the arms, and coming around the trapezius, scooping up to the back of the scalp. Creating a wave going from one shoulder to the other. And always pumping out towards the armpits. Coming into prayer in center. And then introducing my knuckles, so we're slowly increasing that pressure as we work. Going to work behind in an area that often holds tension. Feeling out for any knots or crunchy bits. And increasing my pressure as we work over these areas. Gently tipping my client to the side, and then using this new space to work in and stretch. Lifting upwards from the shoulder to behind the ears, and creating a push and pull so one movement flows into the next. Working around the ears, and draining down. Transitioning over to the other side, and then repeating. Keeping that push and pull flow. Working deeper into the trapezius. Creating that lovely cross-handed stretch. So aiming to create more space between the shoulder and the head. Area that becomes so easily compressed throughout the day. Nice to really spend some time stretching and releasing. Working up behind the ear. Lifting up towards myself. And then draining down with a flat hand to increase that surface area. And then just one grounding movement as we come back into center. And final stretch of the neck. Following through into the scalp. Gentle pressure pushing the shoulders away from the ears. Taking my grapeseed oil and we're going to spread it all over the surface area that we're going to be working on, so all the way from the neck up to the forehead, making sure we don't miss anywhere. Massaging each muscle group, aiming to lift and sculpt. And release any tension as we go. And starting by working over the sternocleidomastoid, which runs from the collarbone to behind the ears. And then twisting my hands so that the full surface area comes into contact with my client as I pull back. I take the same move and I move up onto the face, lifting again from the collarbone and finishing just in front of the ears. The repetitions are really important to really give each muscle group that time to release and to lift. And start working in and along the jaw. Always lifting up towards myself and using as much of my hands as possible to increase that lift. Big circles over the masseter. Working into any areas of tension. Super important we warm up this area before we do any intraoral work. Draining out along the jawline and then lifting underneath the chin, scooping up towards myself. And then transitioning to work over mentalis, just sitting below the lower lip. Looking out over the depressors where the marionette lines might form, and then changing the angle I'm working, so I'm stretching out over Risorius, all the way from the corner of the lips out towards the ears. And breaking everything up with some effleurage. And doing a big diagonal stretch, crossing the zygomatic arch and coming up to temples. And this is where zygomatic minor and major sit on this diagonal from the corner of the lips all the way up to temples. I'm going to scoop around, coming down the nose and opening the face, creating this downward, outward pressure. Next, focusing on lifting the levators of the upper lip and then turning to work on those nasal labial folds. Finishing by opening the face again. Such a handy transitional move to get you from one part to the other. Scooping up and under the zygomatic arch, applying gentle pressure here as I work out towards the ears. And again, scooping up and under. And really releasing any congestion within the sinuses, any blockages, and helping that lymph to drain from the center of the face out towards the ears and eventually down the neck. Coming to work now around the eyes, so we're circling the orbital bone, really light pressure. Gentle sweeping movements transitioning between those two upwards and downward strokes. And then coming to work over Prosaurus, where the 11 lines might form, stretching outwards to counter that inward contraction. And then stretching the whole of frontalis all the way up into the hairline. And then returning. Next, I'm going to stretch over the corrugators. And by using my thumb to anchor, I can really increase this stretch. So from working one side to the other, and then back again. And you can repeat this all the way up into the hairline. And then repeating on the other side, anchoring and stretching, anchoring and stretching, and lifting outwards as I travel up the forehead. And then stretching both brows at the same time. And come and pinch one brow and keep that stretch going. And repeating on the other side. Good stretch both together, rolling my thumb over my third finger to create that stretch. And working with my 1,000 hands from the third eye up into the hairline, and then just slightly changing direction to stretch the whole of frontalis up. Beautiful, coming into prayer on the chin and scooping up. And working from the collarbone. And then doing my grounding move from the center of the chest. And turning my client to the side. Now working up the face from the shoulder, all the way from shoulder to temples. And working along the jawline, helping everything to drain down the neck. Really working into the masseter now, so feeling for any areas of tension. Using a fanning technique to bring circulation to the surface and also release any stagnant energy. Rolling from different directions to work deeper into the fascia. This work can be done dry and with oil. Next, pinching what I like to call my little crab claws. And then following with a firm and reassuring touch, draining down the neck and scooping back up and round. And working either side of the lips, following Rosorius out towards the ears. And then scooping underneath the zygomatic arch and circling the orbital bone. Coming to work at the side of the bed. I'm going to stretch either side of the eye, draining out towards the ear. And you can use the same technique all over the face as we scoop up underneath the zygomatic arch, keeping my hands flat. And then finally working out and along the jawline, paddling over the masseter. And finally working back up the face. And along Rosorius, underneath the zygomatic arch, either side of the eye. And then across the forehead. And then draining down the neck. Bringing my client back up to center, grounding before turning to the other side. And working from the other side, again lifting from the shoulder up onto temples, creating a lovely big diagonal stroke all the way up the neck and in front of the ear. And working to include the face, so fanning from top to bottom, using as much surface area of my hands as I can. And then draining either side of the jaw and working down the neck with a flat hand and then traveling up the front and working deeper into the master. Again, really warming up this area before we start working inside the mouth. And transitioning into using my fanning technique, lifting, changing direction just gently. And then draining down, rolling the skin. And working either side of the lips. Stretching out cross rosorius. And then following with a flat hand. Scooping up underneath the zygomatic arch. And following around the orbital bone. Coming to work again from the side of the bed. Placing one hand above and below the brow. Stretching all the way to the ear. Always thinking about the shapes of the muscles that I'm working on. So the auricularis oris is a circular muscle that sits encompassing the eye. And by doing this, we're stretching it from all angles, creating a beautiful opening effect and increasing the drainage of our lymph. Bringing that same move now down underneath the cheekbone. Out and along rosorius. And then finally along the jawline. Working back up the face, underneath the cheekbones. Either side of the eye. And across frontalis. Working into the hairline. Using that same 1,000 hand technique. Beautiful, bringing my client back up to center. Using that same grounding move. and opening the face. Apply a little bit more oil before we start our intraoral work, so really focusing around the jaw and over the muscle groups I'm going to be working to release. This work can sometimes feel a little bit tender, but we never want it to feel painful. And we want a really gentle, gradual release of any tension that's built up into the masseter and along the buccal muscles. Gently increasing the pressure by bringing in my knuckling. Amazing, Lainey. If you could open your mouth for me. Perfect, and then close. Lovely. I'm going to try and keep your jaw nice and relaxed. And I'm just going to start by doing some small, medium, and large circles. And small, medium, and large. Lifting upwards. Using a medium to firm pressure. And gentle lifting. Amazing. We'll glide over to this side and gently support your head. Starting by lifting off the bottom jaw and stretching all the way to the lip. Looking down off the top of the jaw, cheekbones even, and then out towards the ear. Working again with my small, medium, and large circles. And gradually increasing that pressure. It's really interesting working with jaw tension and how much we often clench, and it's completely subconscious. So while we sleep or are at work, and even sometimes just bringing awareness to this can be really helpful in releasing that buildup of tension that happens over time. Working into any last areas on this side before I gently transition over and tilt my client's head. And then doing the same, working from the other side. Again with those small, medium and large circles. Creating that release, stretching up over the jaw. And then working deep into the masseter where most of us hold our tension. Gentle pull and scooping back down off the cheekbones. Increase that stretch. And then gently returning up to center and finishing with our small, medium and large circles. And to finish, reintroducing my touch with some really gentle effleurage, still lifting up. And then incorporating mushrooms to help with drainage. Exactly how we would use a gua sha, moving in from the inside of the face outwards. Being really mindful of pressure. Bring them up to work over the forehead. And doing big circles over the temples. And finishing by coming to work down and over the chest. Again, working into those trapezius muscles.